Hello and welcome to the Disable the Label podcast. I'm your host, Kerry, and on our podcast we'll be chatting about all things disability, holidays, equipment, therapy, funding, you name it, and we'll talk about it. We want to empower and support parents of disabled children across the UK whilst they navigate their child's life. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get into it. This podcast is sponsored by ABR England. ABR is unique and highly successful therapy for children with neurological issues and brain injuries. It has a holistic approach to rebuild strength, structure and functions of the body. If you want to find out more about ABR England, check out our app, Disable the Label. On this episode, we interview Catherine, who talks about her life with her child who was born deaf, the first in her family and something new that she had to learn about. So, let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast. Hello,
Thank you,
Catherine.
Hello.
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes.
Good. Right.
I'm sweaty in my house at the moment.
Is it nice and sunny where you are?
It's sunny and cloudy. It's one of those funny days.
Yeah, I woke up to rain this morning and then now it's suddenly getting warmer and I'm like, oh, I'm going to need to open all the windows again. But, see, I'm not complaining because I love the sun. So I usually let everyone introduce themselves because it's much nicer. You know more about yourself than I know about you. So we'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and then we'll carry on with all the questions that we have for you.
Yeah, so I'm Catherine. I currently live in Yeovil in Somerset. We are a military family. I've got two children, Oscar, who is profoundly deaf and is two and a bit now, and Eleanor, who we call Nell for short, who is 7 months old and a hearing little girl.
Cute. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about getting Oscar's diagnosis. Like, how did that come about for you guys? Because obviously everybody's different.
Yes, so Oscar was born what we didn't think was the start of COVID, but actually looking back was the start of COVID, so in the end of May 2020.
Okay.
And it had all been very, very strange, but totally normal pregnancy. And then when he was 3 days old, he had his newborn hearing screening test, which he failed. But then the audiologist doing it had said, look, he was a C-section baby. C-section babies fail this all the time. It'll be fine, but we do need to refer you to audiology. So because of COVID, we got into audiology really fast. So they told us it was going to be a 3-month wait. And in fact, it was only a week before we were in, because they were only seeing babies. And I had to go to the appointment on my own. Scott, my partner, sat in the car park, and she did the tests and she said, I'm really sorry, I'm not getting any readings. And he wasn't. And we'd spent a few days watching him and going, I really don't think he's reacting to sound, like he's sleeping through like loud noises.
Right.
And because he was our first, we didn't really know know what babies are supposed to do. But I was pretty sure they were supposed to wake up because I was on a lot of medication and my alarm was going off through the night. Well, he wasn't even stirring, not even once.
Oh, okay.
For any of those alarms going off. And so I think Scott, kind of knew, and I wasn't allowing myself to even think about it. So it didn't come as a big surprise to Scott, but it did to me. It's getting a bit emotional thinking about it. So we had the results, and really luckily, the audiologist let Scott come in after we had the response. He kind of got snuck in, and then the ball got rolling from then, really. And that was
because that's really hard to find that diagnosis out basically by yourself. Was Scott on the phone or anything? Like, did you have him on the phone whilst you got it, or?
No, because the tests take such a long time.
Right.
And especially with a newborn baby, because you have to sit so still for the tests, you just have to keep repeating because it just wouldn't keep still. We had to wait for him to fall asleep. So we were in there about 2 to 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And so I managed to phone him once. And in fact, I texted him when she did one side and she said, I'm really sorry, we're not getting any readings from this side. I texted him. And so he was kind of waiting. And then when she didn't get very many readings from the other side, it was like, let's just stop this test. I'm pretty sure he's deaf.
I'm so glad that he was able to be like snuck in, because that's really hard to deal with completely on your own. And not only that, but you have your baby with you. Like,
I had my baby with me. I was 10 days from giving birth for my first baby. I had a cesarean section, so I was still like sliced open and full of bandages.
Yeah.
It was
very full on.
Looking
That's a
back,
very full on.
Horrible.
Yeah. And like, it's hard because COVID has affected so many people, but that is the crux of it, when you're having to go into appointments completely by yourself and basically getting a diagnosis completely alone, whilst 10 days postpartum and having your baby there and like worrying about everything, I'm sure. So I'm so glad that he was able to come into the appointment in the end with you, even though you found out by yourself, really. So what then happened from there? Do you think it was a different process because of COVID, or I know you don't know what the process is usually, but
no, well, it was brilliant. Everything just kind of slipped into its place. So we went home that night with a load of leaflets and information that I had not taken in, but Scott had.
Yeah.
The next morning, Oscar had a teacher of the deaf who phoned me up to start the process. It was the next day.
That's fantastic.
So it was brilliant. And by then we had a second appointment. So she got for his hearing aids to be fitted. So when we got the diagnosis when he was 10 days old. By the time he was 26 days old, we had his first hearing aids.
Okay.
His teacher of the deaf had already come round to our house. She started the ball rolling. So it was brilliant. It was bang, bang, bang. This is all things you need.
Yeah.
And the system was there to help.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm so glad that it was like that great and it was a really quick process, because otherwise you may have been sat there kind of wondering. I didn't know with COVID whether it then be, everything was backed up, I know, with COVID. So, and I know some things were different than others, some things happened fast, some things didn't. So it's really nice that you didn't have to sit there and wait and be like, what happens now? Like, what is this going to look like for us? Did she explain, or like what was going to happen over the next few like coming months and that kind of thing? Did she sit down and go through everything with you?
She did, but very gently. Because I think she was used to kind of shell-shocked parents. And to be honest, a lot of stuff was said to us and we just didn't take it in.
Yeah.
But what was great was it was really constant and little, and we were introduced to things like the National Deaf Children's Society, so we could then go away and do research like little bits at a time. Because basically they said to us, he might be able to have cochlear implants or he might not, because we don't know the cause of deafness yet. So no promises were made, but what was said was he will be fine. Like, it's not a terrible diagnosis. It's life-changing for him, but there's not going to be anything he's not going to be able to do. And that positivity is what I remember from that time.
That's amazing. Like, because I think sometimes either you get a very, I suppose, negative response, like kind of trying to prep you for what's going to come, because it is going to be different and some parts will be more difficult than others. But it's actually really nice to hear that you got a positive, experience, because that probably mapped out the start of his life massively, because it gave you the positivity to like be like, we can handle this, we've got this, there's going to be things that we need to learn, like, you know, I'm sure there's a ton of medical jargon that you had to like take on board, which I think that's the issue when you're getting a diagnosis, when you're trying to learn about everything, whether there's, you can kind of learn without having to know all the medical jargon. At some point you're going to have to learn it to understand what the next medical person is saying to you and the next medical person. So not only are you trying to take on board what diagnosis your child's just got, but you're also trying to understand what on earth these people are saying to you, because it's all medical based. Let's be honest, it's not kind of, you know, the stuff that you would hear in the, I suppose, in social media or the public eye, because that is kind of a simpler version of saying it, but they need to be so specific sometimes that medical stuff needs to be said. That can be so like bombarding. I know that I'm a medical person and I try my best not to be super medical, but it's really difficult when you're trying to explain something, you know. So I'm really glad you had a positive experience, because I feel like that's brought you into like a positive start to Oscar's life, and then you've gone at it with a positive mindset rather than oh my goodness, this is just going to be really difficult and that's really scary, you know, because that kind of gives off something to...
I did at first. It was like being hit in the face with a truck, and I couldn't, it was like I couldn't breathe. But then the next day, well, you've still got this little baby to look after, and it still needs feeding, and it still is incredibly beautiful, like the most beautiful baby who's ever been born ever.
Not biased at all, yeah.
and that takes over, and this little boy who is, you know, my first baby, well, that's what became important. And the fact that he couldn't hear me didn't matter, because he could see my face and all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
That we knew we'd just deal with it. And it quickly became, you know, in that first child, every parent thinks they've got the best baby ever. Well, that's what we thought about our baby. And being deaf, that didn't alter it. But it was our job to look after him. And no matter what it was, we were looking after him.
Yeah, totally. So what was your experience of deafness before Oscar? Like, is there anybody in your family?
Nothing. No deafness on either of our sides.
Wow.
That we knew of. I'd never met another deaf person.
Okay.
You know, I was aware of it, obviously, and I knew about BSL and
I
learned any, and I'd, you know, there was a family friend who was a bit hard of hearing, and I've got a granddad who wears hearing aids, but that's because you know, in his 90s. But other than that, we knew nothing.
Okay. So how old was he when he did get his cochlear implants then? Because you said you weren't really sure whether he was able to or not. So how did it go then after that? So he had his first hearing aids and then you kind of continued. When did you find out that he could have them?
He went for an MRI when he was about 6 months old.
Okay.
And this was when things were slightly delayed because of COVID.
Right.
So they trialled him with hearing aids for a while, and we knew there was no response to that. So just before Christmas, he had an MRI. So we had to go to hospital again on my own. He was sedated. He was, in fact, the only baby they've come across who was sedated and still moved too much for the MRI to pick up a clear picture.
Like wriggle bum there.
yeah. It's not stopped moving since the day he was born. But the surgeon, so just after Christmas, we got a message saying we can see that there's a good enough cochlea, like his cochlea doesn't look damaged.
Yeah.
And we think we'll definitely be able to give him cochlear implants, which was like the best Christmas present ever.
Yeah. And so what was your knowledge of cochlear implants at that point? Because I don't know whether some of the listeners will know what they are. So I'll let you explain it, because you're more the pro than I am.
So until I'd had Oscar, I knew nothing about them. But what they are they they have an operation, and they put a little probe that goes into the nerve that feeds sound waves to the brain. So what Oscar doesn't do is Oscar doesn't produce the protein that turns sound waves into electrical waves that the brain then reads. So what a cochlear implant does is bypasses the cochlea and does that work, that electric work, and feeds it straight into his brain. So he had an operation to put the wires into the nerve, and I hope I'm getting this right. And then he wears a processor on the outside of his head. That's a magnet that's attached to the processor, and the sound wave gets fed into it.
Yeah. So if people haven't seen a cochlear, it's basically if you ever see somebody with something attached in their hair, that's a cochlear, and it looks like it goes around the ear, and it looks like a hearing aid on the ear section because it still has the battery, you know, that kind of thing. It doesn't sit inside their ear, it sits like on their head. So yeah, and they're absolutely fantastic things. Like I've obviously worked with kids with cochlear implants before, and like, you know, some of them used to take them out just to not be able to hear me.
I'll do that. So at Christmas, just after Christmas, we had to go to the hospital, and the surgeon looked at him, and the surgeon said, yes, I'm happy to sign off this operation. But he said to me, we know in the next 10 days that COVID is going to absolutely go crazy, because it was after that Christmas where everyone had been released for like 3 days. and
everyone was mixing.
COVID, the whole
Stop
family.
this. Let's go, people.
But unfortunately, the outpatient children's ward was where they put all the COVID patients in the hospital, so they knew that was all going to have to close down.
Right.
So we were just waiting for COVID to basically recover, for the hospitals to recover, for Oscar to have his operation. So they said to us, usually we want to do it about 8 months, but we know we want to get it in before they turn 1. So Oscar had it at 11 months, and it got turned on 2 days before he turned 1.
Wow.
So
that's crazy. So is there a reason why they want to do it before 1? Is it better? Do they get a better...
Yes, it's because children lose the ability to learn how to speak. So it's the way that children pick up language really easily when they're children, but as adults we really struggle to learn a foreign language, because over time we lose that ability. So the earlier they get it in, the better. So if it had not been switched on until he was 2, they weren't saying he was never going to speak, but it was just going to be that bit harder for him. So the earlier the better.
It's not that if it's put in later it doesn't necessarily work. I'm guessing it works, but it's then them being able to then process it, understand it, and then speak. Because I think the girl that I used to work with, cochlear implants were very new. Like she's 23 now, so obviously a lot older. I think cochlear implants were quite new when she was younger. I'm pretty sure she didn't have it before she was 1, and I think that's where they then struggle with that communication a little bit. So what was it like when he had it turned on for the first time? What was he like?
We were so excited, right? We'd watched all these videos about kids hearing for the first time. We went to Bristol for the first switch on, and they'd said, because it's his first one, both parents are allowed in, because it's so exciting that they get special permission for 2 parents to come in. We set up the iPad, we were there waiting, and they put him at a little chair on a table with some toys, and they turned it on, and he looked up and looked around, and then looked back at his toys and carried on playing.
He's like, oh God,
anticlimactic moment.
Now I've actually got to listen to you all.
He was like, oh, that's interesting, but not as interesting as these toys. Oh,
that's so cute.
And for ages everyone was going, can we see the video? And we were like,
It didn't go really to plan. Oh, that's too funny. How cute. It's like, no, my toys are way more interesting than anyone talking will ever be.
Yeah.
Okay, so what things have then helped him since there? Because that was kind of, I suppose, a big step in his life, in your both your lives. It will be helpful for you and it's helpful for him. It's a growing stage for him and his deaf journey, I suppose. So what were the other things like then after that that really helped him, or the things that you've done that has helped him?
So we've had a lot of speech therapy, which has been really good into teaching me how to speak to him. So understanding things like which the easiest sounds that he hears, compared to the sounds that are more difficult for him to hear. So we speak to him quite a sing-songy voice, because he hears those kind of ups and down noises much easier than he hears quite flat noises.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose for us, what we were told is how deaf children are slightly different in, he's an utter adventurer, thrill seeker. Like, he will climb everything, he will hang upside down. We were like, what is that kid doing? Like, this kid's bonkers. And to be explained that actually he's looking for a sense that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
So that is why he's up on the ceiling.
Jump from the top step.
He used to watch
the second one
down, like.
Yeah, that sensory feedback that he's trying to get, that he doesn't get from having hearing. All the other senses are heightened, but he's still trying to get some feedback, his body, his brain, everything.
And what else has helped us? We did a few courses with the National Deaf Children's Society, because it was just online courses, and they again normalised what it was we were going through, and it was really nice to speak to other deaf parents, especially deaf parents who are further down the line.
Yeah.
And even see deaf children who were like, doing really well, and all the things that we had spoke about as a family, so it's like, we don't want him ever to feel sorry for himself. We joke, but we say he's only allowed to ever call himself disabled if he gets something for free. So that we deal with the issues, and we're never gonna trivialize the problems that he is going to come across, because he doesn't hear the way that other people do. But at the same time, he has to still strive and work really hard, the same way that any other child, person, adult, because we're not raising a child, we're raising an adult who has to live in the world and just deal with the cards that they've been dealt. And when you start seeing those deaf children and deaf adults, Rose and Strictly, we have to mention her. And seeing all that stuff has helped us as parents to know what we're doing is right, but also that knowing that there's role models out there for him.
Oh yeah, totally. Because you need that kind of balance, don't you? You need to know that he knows that he can do anything he wants. He can achieve anything he wants to achieve if he puts his mind to it, if he works hard enough, or he has the desire to. But also he needs to see other people around him that are in a similar position, or have experienced the way that he might be feeling at that one time. Because let's be honest, in every child adult's life, we all get to the point where there's something that makes you feel different to another person, whether you have a disability or not. That is a fact of life, that happens. But then when you have a disability on top of that, it makes you feel even more different as such. I love the fact that you don't let him use disability in this. And I've got a little girl who always she totally uses that. She goes like, don't you know, Kerry, I'm disabled. And I was just like, yeah. You can still do this. She's just like, damn it didn't work that time. I didn't get out of it.
There are benefits, he does get disability living allowance, and that for us, we were saying, we want to use that so he has the nice clothes and the nice haircut, so he never looks like the disabled child. He's got that extra bit of money that he can use to, I suppose, be the cool kid.
He's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we said, we will be such proud parents if we find out when he's like 17, 18 that he's like chatting up girls and using his cochlear implant to try and talk to people. We will be the proudest parents ever. Or boys, depending. It doesn't matter to me. But that is the kind of attitude we want him to have.
Yeah, like nothing's gonna stop me. I'm me, and that's fine. That's really nice, because I think everybody should grow up in that sense, because everyone's unique. None of us are the same, as we all know. So who would you say, specifically professional wise, was the most helpful in your journey so far?
Definitely his teacher of the deaf.
Okay.
She has been there since day one.
And has it been the same person?
Yes,
she hasn't left.
No, and we've just left because we're moving house. We've just said goodbye to her, and we're starting with someone else soon. But she has always been there to answer questions. She adores him.
Of course.
She's gone into his nursery to talk to them so that they know what they're doing with him and his equipment. And she's just been so positive all the time.
That's amazing.
And whenever we've had an issue, we've not had major issues, but when we've been kind of wondering if we were doing the right thing, like there's a bit of debate about whether to learn sign language cochlear implant children or to let them learn English alone, and we were very strongly in belief of doing BSL and doing the two together.
Yeah,
she
totally.
went away and did a load of research for us to prove that we were doing the right thing, and we were really happy with it, and she has supported our decisions all the way across, and she's been brilliant.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so nice to hear. I totally agree with the BSL as a support mechanism as well, because you never know when he's going to not be able to have his cochlear implants in, use them, etc. Like I said to you when we chatted before, I've worked with a little girl who had them, and I took her kayaking. She couldn't wear them, her ones, and so she was on the kayak, deaf. I was behind her, and the only way to speak to her was her sister on the other kayak signing to her. And that is a clear thing of she wasn't close enough to lip read, but she was close enough to see the signs. Yeah. And that is key to show how important that is as a backup. It's, if he really, really needs it, he has it there. He has a tool in his tool belt, and we all need that in our own lives. We all have our own tools to get through our lives, and that's one of his. And so I totally agree, and I'm so glad that you're doing BSL with him, because you never know what's going to happen, especially with technology. Anything could happen with that cochlear.
And he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he wakes up upset in the middle of the night, as all 2-year-olds do. And we are able to go in and sign, Daddy's going downstairs to get you some milk. Like, just simple stuff like that.
Yeah.
That we either have blank faces at him until his dad turns up with some milk, or we put his cochlear implants on, but it's a fuss, and it's 3:00 in the morning, and he doesn't want them on because he's tired and he's stressed.
Yeah.
Or you sign.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's when it actually comes to living the life, you are, in a way, what's right for your child, what is needed for your child professionally as well, because that is a professional opinion, whoever it might have been who was not pushing it, that is their personal professional opinion, but they're not living it. They don't even think about those times in the middle of the night that he wakes up, or when he's really sick one day, even when he's not like the age he is, when he's like sick and it's 5:00 in the morning and he's throwing up and you're signing to him. That is going to be so helpful, and it's so needed in his life. It's crazy that, because I've obviously worked with some deaf children before, and I've known that, and I remember saying to that's so important, he needs that, totally, because there's so many life moments that professionals are not involved in. They're not in the lives all the time, and professionally it might say no, that's, he needs to speak, or he needs to learn how to lip read, or whatever it may be that they're trying to say, or use his cochlears, which is obviously what they were saying for you. I think it's really key to make sure you're doing what's right for you, and that is totally what's right, you know.
Yeah.
I'm
And
really glad you
he
had.
doesn't hear the way that we hear. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
He will always find listening much more difficult than we find listening. So when he's in a very noisy situation, so usually he'll wear his cochlear implants from the second he wakes up, he asks for them until the second he goes to bed, and it's fine. But we'll find that, like, I took him to a children's party and he loved it. He had the best time, but it was loud. It was really consistently loud. And when he got home from that party, he just wanted a break from listening. And he took them off and he had them off for an hour and then he wanted them back on again. But in that hour, I still had to communicate with him.
Yeah.
And if I'd have tried to put them on, he would, you know, he couldn't cope with them being on. He couldn't cope with that noise because he had that just intense wall of sound for a few hours, and he will always have that.
And it's a much more I explain to some people sometimes, like, it's like when you're learning something new, you're constantly having to really focus your brain. And for him, that is what it will always be like when he's hearing through his cochlea, because there's going to be sounds that he's not heard before all the time, and so his brain is trying to work out what they are. So it's like us sitting and doing like a mathematical equation, like for like hours and hours. Like, that is full on for anyone. And sensory feedback, for one, he needs that, like, no sensory, like, you know. And we can just go and sit in a quiet room, but he doesn't want necessarily that. He just wants silence, but just carry on playing by himself or wherever it may be, you know. So yeah, you're totally right on that. What have been the hardest parts for you? Has it been some professionals? Has it been telling family or helping family learn about it? Like, are there any specific hard parts for you?
Hard. But I think that's because I was so raw at the time that I couldn't even say the word death without crying for about a week. And then I suppose what was hard was doing everything on my own. So I went through all his hospital appointments, his operation, were all done on my own. Yeah. And in fact, by the time it came to the operation, I was pregnant again. So I was pregnant and doing it on my own. And I suppose the other hard thing is that, so I suppose what we get a lot of people staring at him, and I don't really mind. We chose bright blue cochlear implants for him because we want him to wear them like an accessory and for people to see them. I don't want him to hide them, but at the same time, a lot of people do look at them, and most people are fine. And a lot of kids go, "What's he got on his head?" And I really, really like that because I can explain to them and they understand it. And you know, his ears don't work, so he wears these, and these are his, you know, his magic ears. In the same way that I wear glasses because my eyes don't work. Like, but there's been occasions, and it's only adults who we were once out in a group, and a woman came up to me, an older woman, and she went, "What's your son's problem?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I just don't understand adults. Why?
No.
It's I just can't believe that. Like,
and there was once we were playing in the park, and Oscar was only little, and there was a boy who was quite a bit older, and Oscar kept stealing his football, and his dad was going, no, let play with the little boy, play football. And so waited about 5 minutes, and I let Oscar play, and I could see this little boy was going to be a bit fed up with Oscar. So I took him away, and as I was walking away, I heard the dad say, "You've got to be nice to that little boy because he's got problems." And I looked at Oscar, who is the happiest, blonde, curly-haired, cherub-looking boy, and I just thought, yes, he's deaf, but there are very few children who've got less problems than my son does. Like, he lives the happiest life. He's the happiest little boy. And in a way, like, I just had to laugh at this dad who was obviously trying to do it in the nice way, in that you have to play with the child, like don't leave out the child, especially the disabled child. But it was the wrong words and the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
But
And
that definitely minority.
Yeah, and that is, it's crazy, isn't it? It's because children will always ask the questions. Adults won't ask the questions, or they won't ask them in the correct way. And actually, in fact, that's because they don't understand. They are not educated in it. And oh, what's the right word? I can't think of the word, but it really frustrates me because some of them don't even care to understand or learn the correct words, like and it's something that I've grown up around disability, just because my family were involved with my dad was involved with disabled children, so I was obviously always taught correctly as a child and then brought up into adulthood like that, and I have met people that haven't been, but I'm not afraid as an adult to instantly correct those people if we're in the right environment, because if I don't correct them, how are they going to learn? And then if they come across somebody that has a disabled child and says the wrong thing, that's going to actually hurt that parent or even that child. So I think it's really key to teach other people, but I think it's really, really sad that adults aren't willing to just be open and go, I don't know what this child has and I don't know the right words, and even just have spoken to you, and said, oh, like, just the right words. It really frustrates me, because it's the same, like, it's the same with all different disabilities. The word handicapped is still used, which is very frustrating for me and other people, and not, and it's just like uneducation on their part, but that could ruin somebody else's feelings and have a big impact, actually.
And I think it's my job as a parent to teach Oscar, not that there's something wrong with him, but there's something wrong with these other people. And it's our job to do our best to frame it in a positive way, to teach people about it, because most of the time is people just want to learn. And I remember just after we'd had them switched on, and we had real problems with keeping them off, but we were sat having lunch, and I could see this little boy on the table next to him going, Dad, what's that little boy got on his head? And his dad turned around and I turned around at the same time, and I said, do you want to come over and have a look? This little boy came running over, and I explained to him about his ears, and his dad was like, oh, they're so cool, aren't they? Oh, how does it work? Oh, we've just been learning about technology as a family, and medical technology. And they were so enthusiastic, and the little boy was so interested. It was wonderful. It made my heart sing. That's what their family so was. Nice. And that is the majority of actions that we have with people, which is great.
Yeah, and I'm so glad. And I think it is hard. I think it's hard on other people's sides to know how to approach it, because you may be a parent and there are parents out there that are still really struggling with their child's diagnosis and don't want to talk about it and don't want them to be seen as different, etc., or whatever it may be that they're struggling with, and so therefore they don't want a parent or another child to ask, which is a real shame, because that's a learning opportunity for that parent and that child or that adult. And you're right, he's the one that's now going to teach everybody who he meets, which he definitely will, because he's so boisterous and amazing and lovely child. And that's really exciting that you're giving him the confidence to teach others, because unless he teaches them, there's no way for them to understand it fully, because none of us know everything, and like you said, you didn't know really anything about death before you had Oscar, and so you've learned so much, and everything happens at different times. People learn different things different times. So, and I think it's really cool that he's going to be able to teach other kids around him, because that is like a life lesson for that child that they will take throughout into their adulthood, and they're going to then spread their knowledge with other people. And that's the only way we can teach everybody, is like not to hide it. And you're right, like, yeah, he should have blue implants, because like he wants the blue. Like, let's be honest, if they were grey, is he going to really want to wear them? Probably not. you know.
Yeah. And the thing is, Oscar is going to be deaf his whole life. From the minute he was born to the minute he dies, he's going to be deaf. And if we teach him to be embarrassed or ashamed, then he's going to be embarrassed and ashamed of him his whole life. And who wants to be embarrassed and ashamed of who they are for their whole life? He's proud of it. He will be proud of it. He will learn to overcome the obstacles and enjoy the benefits. And there are benefits of being deaf. And I've spoken to plenty of people. You know, Rose, when she won Strictly, I'm proud to be deaf. I love being deaf. Like, and that's what he has to capture and show to other people.
And that's
we don't
what
feel
makes
sorry for him.
Yeah. And that's him. It's part of him. Like, he wouldn't be the same Oscar as he is without that. Like, let's be honest. And that's really hard for other people to understand, being that positive about it. Because a lot of people, I think, go down the route of feeling sorry because, like, oh, well, frankly, Oscar doesn't know any different. Like, let's be honest.
No.
He will never know what it's like to hear like us. But we will never know what it's like to hear like him, because we're not him, and he is unique, just as we are all unique. And it's so much better to think about it like that, because everybody has their own thing that makes them unique, that they teach the next person. And his is about him being deaf and how crazy he gets to be because of it, because he can hang upside down and everything. Like, you know, how many kids are doing that?
He's got no fear. He is going to spend his adult life on roller coasters. And he is super visual, so you can't hide anything from him because he can spot it, and he learns in a different way. Like he picks up signs like this because he's constantly watching you, and so you can't get away with anything with him. You can't if you've got some sweets or anything in the corner of his eye, no way you can go and hide them, because he's just learned to use his other senses
so much better, I suppose. And
now he's hearing as well. So
he's bonus on top of us, I reckon. I think, you know, it's true, isn't it? He's using all of his senses to the max, and then he's now still got his hearing in some form. So he has, you know, he trumps everyone. He can see everything. So what advice would you give then to other parents in your position, I suppose?
If I was speaking to someone who just got that diagnosis, I would say, give yourself a minute to be upset. That's totally okay. And then put that aside once you've given into it for a day, and look at all the wonderful the deaf children there are in the world, and you're gonna be fine. It's not, yes, you have to do a bit more medical things than you would have done, and it is harder. And I only know it's harder because my second child is hearing, so it's only once we had her that we kind of realized how much easier it is to have a child who doesn't have a disability. But your child will be just fine. They will absolutely thrive. The system is out there to support them, and you're going to look at your child and watch them absolutely bloom, and you'll be so proud of them.
That's so true and so nice. And I think you're right, it's okay to be upset, and you might have upset days that just randomly, like, you know, appear, and just take them, accept them, and go with it on that day, because, you know, that's totally okay to feel that way. but then once that's over, then park it and go on and show your
Yeah.
child how amazing they are, because they totally are.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's
Amazing advice.
yeah, it is. It is.
How can
And
people
Oscar
follow
is
you? Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Oh,
Carry on, carry on.
no, I was just going to say that we're now at the stage with Oscar where he is really coming on in his speech. And as a mom, when he because I know it's so much harder for him to learn to speak, and he speaks with a mixture of sign and speech, but you'll suddenly wake up and he'll have a new sound.
Oh,
and
wow.
and then you're like, wow, where did that come from? You know, he's just gone from saying mo rather than no to a really clear n sound. And you are so proud and excited that he is grasping all of this stuff every day. And yes, he is slightly behind the average hearing child, but not very much. So he's made it up really fast. But you appreciate so much more of those little sounds and how hard he works at them.
Yeah, totally. And I think like celebrate them even more, because he's amazing. And the fact that he's
Yeah.
like getting these things, like celebrate your children, because they're working hard. He's obviously clearly working when he's sleeping. His brain is clearly working. Overload. Yeah. Are you planning for him to go to mainstream school?
I am, yes. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. So he's going to a part-time deaf nursery in September. But mainstream nursery the rest of the time, and then into a mainstream school.
Cool. Because he goes to mainstream nursery now, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Yeah, and loves it.
Loves it. And his speech has come on so much since he's been there, because he wants to speak with the other children.
Yeah, and kids learn from others. Like it's actually a little bit like how when I'm teaching children to walk or sit or whatever. If they have other children around them doing those things, they are very aware, creatures, I suppose, because they're watching and they're learning and they're working out a way for them to do it themselves. So it's really key for him to be around other kids that are jabbering away and learn from that. But also it is key for him to be around kids that have similar disabilities, a disability to him, because then he can feel like he belongs as well. Sometimes when he has those days that he feels like he may be the only person, he's not, definitely not. And he'll have those friends. He gets the bonus having both those lots of friends, so yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And he gets to teach all the mainstream school about his deafness, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And like I remember speaking to somebody the other week on a podcast, and they were saying like, I was the only person in my school who was disabled. And I know that's not as uncommon now, but I'm always try and push people that if I think, any of my clients, their children go to mainstream school, that's way more beneficial. They're going to learn so much. They're going to learn more things, bonus things. And they all have that, 1 or 2 days that they go to, a therapy center or whatever it may be for them, and for him, the deaf nursery, like that's really key. So he gets the best of both worlds, most definitely.
Yeah.
So how can people follow your journey?
I have Instagram like most of the world at the moment. So you can follow me at Catherine Clapham, easy peasy.
Nice.
I mainly post pictures of my children.
Of course.
Yeah. Sometimes dinner, but very rarely. Very rarely pictures of me having a night out without my children. Yeah. So at Catherine Clapham on Instagram.
Cool. Thank you very much for coming on and chatting, because it's been really, really great. And, hopefully teaches some people out there, and, maybe your journey can help somebody else.
I hope so. And if anyone, is going through this and wants to connect, then I'm more than happy to chat to. to anyone and everyone.
Perfect. Right. Well, we'll end it there. So thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in for Disable the Label podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment to let us know what you thought of this episode. More episodes will be coming soon, so make sure you tune in. Don't forget you can download our app for free via the App Store. That's Google Play or Apple App Store. Just search Disable the Label and you'll find us.